Hey there guys, Tom here. Welcome back to my movie channel and thank you very much for joining me for this, my review of the brand new DC film Wonder Woman 1984. And today I'm joined by my friend Ali. So if you guys haven't been here before, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notifications bell so that you never miss out on my take on all things movie. So Wonder Woman 1984 came out in Australian cinemas today as well as on HBO Max in the US. So unfortunately people in the US have to watch it at home, which really sucks for them. I wish people could see this on a big screen because it's where this film deserves to be seen. So we're going to start off with a non-spoiler review and then I will give you guys a massive spoiler warning when we go into spoilers in case you haven't had a chance to see the film yet. So I'm going to start with Ali. What did you think overall of Wonder Woman 1984? No spoilers.
Okay. Look, I had fun. I did not think it was as strong in a lot of ways as the first one. That's not necessarily a knock because I didn't expect it to live up to that. But there's so many aspects of the movie where all I can think is this would work better if ... There's just a lot of things where I think if they approached them a little differently, tweaked it a little, I would have had a better time. But obviously that's subjective. Like, look, I had a good time. Gal Gadot's still amazing. Chris Pine, I have a crush on him, so like I'm not going to give us an objective viewpoint of him.
Who doesn't have a crush on him?
True. Patty Jenkins is back in the director's chair. Love her work. Don't think this is her best outing as a director. And definitely think the green screen needed another go over.
There were some moments where I'm like, that green screen's really showing, which is odd because on a lot of the press tour they were talking about how practical they did things. And I'm watching the movie, and especially like in the first act, there's some pretty bad green screen stuff.
I think there's a difference though between doing something practically and doing something, you know, with the actors on the day at the same time that you were actually doing those effects. Like, sure, they could have done a lot of explosions and stunts, but there's a difference between that and just overlaying that on real people.
On green screen, so you could have Gal Gadot do something great physically.
Yeah.
But in a CG environment.
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Listen, I love the first Wonder Woman. It's one of my it is my favorite DC movie. Full stop. End of sentence. People who love The Dark Knight, come at me. But it's my favorite DC movie. I love that film. I was very excited for this movie, and listen, this movie disappointed me. I don't love the film. I don't think it's a bad film. I don't think it's an awful film. I think it's a good movie, but it let me down in a lot of ways, and I think the most significant criticism I can levy against this movie is that, and I hate comparing, one sequel to the original, but in the original Wonder Woman, that movie is all character. It had a lot of heart, it had a really compelling story, and a really compelling message to that movie, and in Wonder Woman 84, the story was so lacking overall to me. There were moments in which the story certainly worked for me, but overall, the story was so lacking, and I feel like this film was also too long, and it wasn't as compelling or didn't have the heart of the first one, and in that sense, it really let me down. But other than that, the film has some fantastic sequences. It is a fun movie, but I will say this right off the top. If you're going into this movie expecting a full-on action superhero movie, that's not what this movie is, just to set some expectations. Because I went in with, I guess, false expectations that this movie was going to have as much action as, say, the first one did, and it didn't, and that's okay. It didn't need to, but it isn't as action-packed as the first one. That's what I would say. You got anything else to add, Ali?
I think that when people say action-packed, I don't just think of there's a lot of explosions and fights. I also think that there's a lot happening in the movie. Just a lot to keep up with, lots to follow, and that characters are actually really active and doing something. And for a fairly significant portion of the movie, no one's really doing anything.
No, there's a lot of talking.
Yeah, and that's fine if you have something to say.
But I get like, and they're trying, a lot of the first act of this movie is setting up the characters, and especially Kristen Wiig's character, Pedro Pascal's character, and establishing where Diana is in 1984. But I felt like there was almost too much of that. And, again, this might be a false expectations thing, but the movie doesn't have a no man's land sequence. It doesn't have that big there's not really a scene in this film that was, you know, the standout, exciting scene. Most of this movie is just sort of one note. I didn't feel like anything built in this movie. It was all kind of flat to me. But the biggest positive I can say about this movie is Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She carries the movie. She is the best part about the movie is watching her. So I think, you know, if it wasn't for her in this movie giving the performance that she gave, I probably enjoyed this movie even less.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I want to talk about what you said about setup.
Yeah.
I feel that this movie actually didn't set much up to be paid off later. There's payoff in the movie in that things happen and you're supposed to care about them, but they're not set up. They come almost out of nowhere. We'll get more into that in the spoiler review, obviously, but it does feel like they didn't properly set up certain character moments.
Yeah, and I just felt like there was you're right. You didn't care about really anything happening in the movie. You know, and they're trying to tell the best story they can. I really wish they did something else.
Yeah. We should talk about the storyline of
this
thing.
The storyline is not great. It's just not. And I can see why some of the trailers were a little bit lackluster. None of the trailers really blew anyone away because there's really no story there. Like, the whole story is built upon be careful what you wish for. That's really the story of the movie. And that's how, you know, we get Chris Pine's character and all that stuff. But even with that, they did such a poor job in setup. I think, like you were saying, that when you have a Chris Pine show up and him and Gal have great chemistry, but again, it was lacking some of the magic of the first one.
Because I hadn't really, either I hadn't watched the trailers or I don't really remember them, which doesn't say much for them, I guess. But so when I figured out they were doing, you know, this rock really grants wishes, I was like, this seems like a storyline that would appear in a DC TV show. It's very TV show-esque. I honestly felt like I was watching a bigger budgeted CW episode. Yeah, and look, I like a lot of those shows, and I think that, you know, with a bigger budget, a lot of them would actually be on par with some of the movies in terms of actual character writing. But look, this is a not great plot of a TV episode, because there's a lot you could do with things they introduce in this movie in terms of like this man who's Maxwell Lord is essentially a televangelist of the 1980s, and that was a huge deal. Citizens of the world. That was a huge deal in the 1980s, that televangelists were essentially scam artists and taking people's money. So you can do something with that and maybe do some commentary, but they don't. That's a weird choice to introduce all of these elements that were so vital in the year the movie is set, and it has that setting in its name. But they did nothing with it. They did nothing with that. Yeah. And honestly, the villain characters, you have Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. Obviously, you have Maxwell Lord played by the Mandalorian himself, Pedro Pascal. I didn't care about either of them, honestly. I didn't care about either of them. And yeah, it's so weird because I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Patty Jenkins is a great director, and she made I think the filmmaking on display here is very well done. You know, like, as far as technically making a movie, I think it's obviously a beautifully made movie. Some dodgy green screen aside, but overall the story just wasn't there for me. So let's get into some spoilers.
Major spoiler! You just gave away a major spoiler.
So Ali, start us off again. Talk about some spoilery elements. So, what worked and didn't work in the...
Going back to my comments about the TV show element. So I think that the movie actually intended for me to get this vibe, because in terms of the tone and just the I shouldn't say structure, the plot elements that it introduces, because they actually have a cameo from Linda Carter in the post-credit scene, which was really cute, and I was very excited because she was my first Wonder Woman, and I think that she's great.
Can I say, as far as not setting things up in the movie goes, they set that thing up with her, because Diana told that story about the, what's her name?
Asteria.
Asteria. I was gonna say Ares. It's like, yeah, Ares is the villain of the first
Yeah.
one. Yeah, Asteria. Like,
Or
you know,
Astoria.
they or
One
whatever it is. They set that up and paid that off.
Yes, and that was great.
But for the rest of the rest of the movie is people wishing for things, getting things, and then like everything goes back to normal.
Yeah.
It just felt the whole movie. By the time you get to the end of it, I'm like, that was really anticlimactic. You know, and I didn't need giant big superhero fight. Like I felt like, it's funny, like compared to the first one, which I hate doing, but you know, it's Wonder Woman, so I think it's fair to compare the two in some sense. That the first one, my issue with it was that third act fight was really over the top comic book, you know, and the rest of the movie felt more grounded. Whereas in this movie, they went the opposite way. It's almost like they heard my criticism and took it way too far. Where it's like, this was really underwhelming, and I found myself almost wishing, God, I wish it was a big CGI superhero fight, because it would have been the most exciting thing to happen in this movie, because nothing else really was exciting for me. Yeah, can we talk about Chris Pine coming back and if that worked or not? Because I thought, you know, for the lack of story they were telling, it worked, and I love seeing Chris Pine and Gal Gadot on screen together. They have fantastic chemistry, and it was great. And what I loved, especially, this is probably my biggest praise with the movie, is that, you know, the story overall I found lacking. Gal Gadot and Wonder Woman's arc specifically, and the challenges that she has to, the emotional struggle she has to go through in this movie of, I wish I had Steve back in my life, so Steve comes back. But then she realizes, well, okay, but now I've lost my powers, and so in order to save the world, I have to give Steve up. And they have this great argument in her apartment where she says, you know, I've given everything to the world and I'm happy to do so, but for once I just want something for me. And so she really struggles with that. And then, you know, you get to the scene where she has to let him go and say goodbye. And I found that really compelling. I found that really compelling, really heartfelt. But that's about it as far as, you know, as far as emotional depth to this movie goes. And I just wish the rest of it held up, and it doesn't, and that's unfortunate for me.
I mean, I'm on the record, as far back as when it was announced, that I don't think Steve Trevor should have come back. And even though I like Chris Pine in the role and I love their chemistry, I still stand by that. But I understand why they felt they wanted to do that, to tell this particular story, even if I don't think the story was really that compelling.
Yes.
And I have something else to say about setup. Oh my god. So the wish thing, and having to renounce your wish, and, you know, the wishes and the chaos and stuff. Great. If you change one crucial thing, and that's to make the theme of the movie selfishness, doing things to improve your own life and not the lives of others. That's Wonder Woman. That's literally a huge part of her character, is that selflessness and putting yourself in harm's way to protect others. If you really foregrounded that in the movie, I think that the wishing element would be improved tenfold.
I just felt like the whole wishing storyline, it's funny we're doing a spoilers review, because honestly, there's not much to spoil. Really?
Yeah,
like,
it goes however well you think it will.
yeah, it's like okay. And listen, I know it's Wonder Woman and it's comic book and it's a fantasy land, and I said this to you before, and we disagree on this, and that's fine, and you probably will as well. I'm probably in the very minority on this. The story they did choose to tell with the wishing stone and all this, this movie felt like a soft reboot of the first one. And it didn't feel, it's odd, it doesn't feel like a sequel to the first one. It feels like the two movies are completely, totally separate as far as tone goes, as far as theme goes. This felt like they were taking it really, I almost want to say cheesy. And it went too far in one direction, I feel like. But that might be just me.
I can see what you're saying. And this actually comes back to my idea of like foregrounding selfishness, because that could potentially tie into the first film's themes.
Yes.
So I really think that that's a key component that was lacking. I wanted that overall theme that the first film gave me, and I know it's unfair to compare them, but
is it unfair to compare them? Because
it's the same directors, the same creative team.
That's what I mean. Like, it's not like we're comparing two different movies from two different franchises. It's you know, it's apples to apples here. And yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly, listen, and I don't want to come across like, oh, I hated the movie, I thought it was awful. Not at all. I enjoyed myself watching the movie. I just felt like it was a little bit too long. The story really isn't there. But Gal Gadot,
Yeah. I
no
think
question.
all
I
of the actors are doing the best they can with the material they're given.
yes.
Like Pedro Pascal, I think Maxwell Lord is kind of a thin character, and he's doing his best to make it work.
But even Kristen Wiig, that character's thin as hell too.
Oh yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And she goes from being I actually found her more compelling when she didn't have powers before she
Yeah.
became Cheetah. And then when she becomes Cheetah and her and Wonder Woman have this little fight, I'm like, oh great, another CGI fight
Yeah.
in
So
in a dark atmosphere that we can't tell what's going on. Like it really, it. I'm like, oh great, the third act just turned into cats. Just ugh, yuck.
the two Maxwell Lord and Barbara share a similar problem to
Yeah.
me, and that's that there is a lack of setup and payoff in their character arcs, insofar as you could call them that. Like,
What arcs?
yeah. So Pedro Pascal's, psychological motivations and underpinnings for what he's doing throughout the movie are not revealed until almost the end of his.
Right at the end of
The
the movie.
film.
I mean, and that to me is like, well, you've already established this dude's a dickhead and he's
Yeah.
an asshole, and it's like, so by the time you get to the end and reveal that, oh, he had a like horrible childhood and his parents, like his father abused his mother or whatever they were trying to set up.
Yeah.
I'm like, I already don't care because he's already an asshole.
Yeah, if they put that earlier, I think that it would
You
make
know what?
it
Start the
better.
movie with that.
Yeah.
Instead of starting with young Diana at the Amazon Olympics.
Well, you don't need to start the movie with the villain.
No, but
backstory.
you put it at the beginning.
Yeah, put it earlier.
Yes, for sure.
You don't even need the flashbacks really. Just have him say something, mention it. Like, put something there for him to work off of, and for you to understand the character and what he's trying to do. And this brings me also to Cheetah, aka Barbara, aka Kristen Wiig.
AKA Edward Enigma from Batman Forever.
So she has you understand her motivations and why she makes her wish in the first place. But when she becomes Cheetah, it's kind of like, why? She
Why did
never
she become a cheetah?
expresses any interest in cheetahs.
No, it's like she looks at Diana's leopard print shoes and she's like, oh, I like your shoes.
Yeah, and then she starts wearing a lot of leopard prints, and that's, cool, but she never.
But again, it's that overused trope of the villain wanting to become, like the hero.
Yeah, but they don't understand why the hero is the hero.
And they
that
don't
kind of
understand.
stuff.
It's just, yeah. And look, there were some exciting sequences. I love Diana flying through the air and swinging from lightning bolt to lightning bolt with the lasso and things like that. And there were some exciting scenes, like that whole truck chase. I thought was a fun sequence. But the overall, the movie let me down. It's really odd because it's a spoiler review. But aside from Linda Carter showing up at the end might be the biggest spoiler of the movie.
Yeah.
And that's in a mid-credit scene that most people probably don't care to stick around for.
And I mean, look, just because I have seen Linda Carter, I'm familiar with her. A lot of people probably haven't seen the TV show that she was in.
No, so until her name pops up, but even then, people go, okay, cool.
Yeah, who's this person?
Yeah.
Like, so.
I haven't seen her show, but I know who she is. So
yeah,
to me,
I
it worked.
have seen her show,
Yes.
and look, 70s TV, a bit cheesy, but she's pretty good in it. Didn't love it.
Not a big fan of this movie. And I'm really disappointed about that because I love the first one so much. And so when you get a sequel that is lackluster, it really does break my heart that, the first one, I hold the first one as such a high benchmark. And am I comparing the two? Probably unfairly? Yes. Yes, I am. But that's how I feel. The second one disappointed me. I don't think it's an awful movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think it was a disappointing movie. And I just found the story and most of the characters to not be very compelling at all. And it didn't have the magic that I feel like a Wonder Woman movie needs to have despite the fantastical elements of the movie. So, Ali, overall, closing thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984.
There are so many aspects of it that I like, and there are moments, like individual moments and scenes in the movie
Yes.
that I was so into.
Yep.
But as a whole, yeah, it
doesn't
really
work.
it didn't work for me. It underwhelmed me. It really did. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's how it happens sometimes. But I will say this: I probably like it a lot more considering the lack of theatrical movies we've had. You know, it's like it doesn't matter which movie I'm going to see in 2020. I'm probably gonna be more excited about it just because I got to go to the movies for once. So listen, I'm glad I saw Wonder Woman 1984. I'll probably buy it digitally at some point just to have it. I'll probably buy the Blu-ray just to have it on the shelf with the first one. But the movie disappointed me. It let me down a little bit, and that's really disappointing. But I want to know what you guys have to say, so make sure you jump down in the comment section below and let us know your thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984. Look out for our reviews of WandaVision. Ali and I are going to be reviewing those episodes together. I think there's 6 episodes of WandaVision, so look out for that. We're really excited about that show coming out, so look out for that coming starting January 15th is when WandaVision comes out. So once again, guys, thank you very much for watching. My name is Tom. That's my friend Ali, and we will see you guys next time.